all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multi-families that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number, or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know,
It's
Zach.
a tough one. I
This is
know,
really hard.
and maybe
This.
comparing numbers is not Jeremy's thing. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. I'm your host, Zach, and joining me once again after a 2-week hiatus is Dan Platt of the Albany Lefts. Albany Greens. Well, basically the only
Yes,
Albany
but also
left
the Albany
party.
Lefts.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
um,
So
not quite existing yet, but we'll let's see. It's
yeah.
slow. I came up with the idea of the slow project in slow motion,
I like it.
and referring to my bandmate Evan kind of said communities have to form organically. You know, you don't plan them. You don't intentional communities don't last. Oh, I said like, well, I don't think if something lasts 10 years, I don't consider that a failure. But he's like, no, and he kind of turned it around rather sounding cynically, but that is a failure. You know, it's because things need to be, real communities are generational. And so if they're not lasting, if they're not built over 15 years and they last another 15, another 15, and that's a very good point. I do kind of agree with that. I want things to last 15 years. And there are organizations like land trusts and things that have since, they were started 30, 40 years ago, and they're still kicking and still going.
Sure.
And they did kind of form, like if you ask them how they formed or whatever, like it's a puzzle. Like they don't really tell a cohesive story that you can really get down to bullets, because I guess it was organic, it was by luck, but I don't like hearing that. It makes me very antsy. Just as antsy as when I see books, SUNY Press. I work for SUNY State University of New York. SUNY Press is putting out a book about knowledge and psilocybin. And knowledge, and that makes me antsy, because it's like I don't consider it when people talk about doing mushrooms or psychedelics, particularly psychedelics, and how it's like they learned by taking psychedelics they were able to grasp subjectivity.
Oh, the stoned ape theory of evolution.
And that's but no, I'm not even talking about in the past. I'm talking about today.
Oh, okay.
That this is how they were able to wrap their head around subjectivity. I'm like, well, good for you. You did something that I grasped in freshman year of high school because I had a teacher who explained it to me. Good for you. Slow clap. But anyway, similarly, I get antsy when confronted with oh yeah, it has to be organic, and meanwhile, the world's burning down. But I guess in crisis, that organic slow motion process accelerates. I hope.
Yeah.
But it also seems like it's because things are sort of stable at the same time,
right?
Especially with the election cycle the way it is. But for example, the left is able to push more in Europe because you have these times where in the parliamentary systems you have half the year it takes the government, sometimes it takes the government to form months, in Spain, or they go through governments every other year.
Get a coalition government going.
Yeah, coalition, as it were, about to find a balance.
Sure.
Or because there's no majority, because that's sort of like what our first past the post, if it has an argument for it, it's that, well, because of the first past the post system, there is always a clear winner. Right. There is a majority, even if it's by half a percentage,
it's efficient,
or 600 votes. At least it means that there is one winner, and the Constitution makes it clear that then they have power.
Right.
Even if they don't have a mandate, and they have to be careful about what they do, because then the Congress will switch or something.
Sure.
They have to be moderate. But anyway, I was in Chicago for a week. Also my birthday, though not doing too much birthday stuff.
Happy birthday.
Maybe I'll put it aside. But again, I spent the weekend being recovering, but also being antsy about like, well, I'm not really. Anyway, when I got to work yesterday, I felt very lonely for some reason, even though I'm not being like I feel antisocial while I'm planning a bunch of shit that I'm gonna do, or I'm going, outings and social things and stuff like that.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's mostly because there's just so much going through my email list. Like, oh shit, I missed that. I missed that. I missed that. I missed that. Not just because of my trip, but like things that I could have done before the trip and things like this week. Like there was stuff this weekend, and I just stayed home and gamed because I just didn't feel like going out, and I'm just hating people at the moment. But anyway, Chicago. Here are the highlights. First, the lowlights. The water sucks. I don't know what's up. I don't know if they're still drawing. Okay, yeah, you see on my post on the Facebook.
Yeah, on the feed.
The water sucks. It's either it tastes there's sediment in there, and besides that, I think there's also the chemicals that they use to treat it so that the sediments don't, there's no bacteria, but there's still a sediment.
Sure.
So you taste dirt and chlorine, and a little bit of chlorine.
That sounds awful.
I think it's because it's the both. If it was just dirt smell, dirt taste, I could probably handle it. Or I get used to it. But because hell, there's some sediment in my water, I guess. But for some reason, it just tastes better. Or just there's less chemical processing.
Sure.
In New York, we have hills, but in the plains, like where do you get your water? It's got to come from the nearest moving or non-moving source, and all of it's polluted and poisoned because if there was any industrial activity, it was going into the watershed.
Right.
So it's like the entire Midwest is one big freaking Superfund site unofficially.
Yeah.
Which is really concerning. But in the other way, and I think this is just larger infrastructural problems with America's third city, or the third coast, is that there hasn't been any mass transit or other mass infrastructure investment since the 40s, maybe.
That's so surprising.
Maybe even then. Well, I was watching a video about how just trying to get a north-south connecting loop was like they would even secure the federal funding in the 90s, and they still just couldn't do it because of local opposition or politics or something like that.
That is
and so what sort of shocked but not quite shocked, I know that every city in America besides New York City is amazingly car dependent, and we're just inching. Urbanists like us are inching our way to relevance.
Oh, yeah.
So Chicago, in the Loop, in the Hotel District, amazingly car dependent. The traffic only kind of thinned out at 7 to 8 on a weekday.
Jeez.
Even in the Hotel District, there were 2 drive-throughs. One of them being a McDonald's. It's in a very nice, fancy glass box McDonald's. That's 3 stories tall.
Ooh.
But it takes up the whole block.
Sure.
And it has a parking lot and all that. And a lot of Chicago is wasteland. In some areas close, I only had to walk 5 blocks from the John Hancock Tower before, maybe 5, maybe 6, 7 blocks. And this is going west. Before then, I hit empty blocks, just empty, not a farm, not a parking lot,
not even a parking lot,
just ground. And then there's some scattershot new development. So there is gentrification happening in some of the blocks, but there's still many blocks, or at least a few, that are still complete empty.
That's
Like there was
bizarre.
a big fire and it was never rebuilt, or it was all razed over
Yeah.
blight, over blighted. Because there wasn't that much blight anymore. So I'm assuming, I guess it was
Yeah.
everything that was blight was demolished eventually, so that
That's
any
weird.
visitors who maybe walked a few blocks away from the Magnificent Mile could see the less magnificent side of things. So yeah, and then lots of car dependency. I mean, it's not like there was obviously lots of density. And there's a good bike network that's been built out, and of course, it's still getting filled out.
That's good. At least.
There was, while I was leaving, there was a article. It was Gotham, I think, that was covering it, or something like that. You had this local real estate developer, aka Parasite, who was like noticing like a bike lane that was put in, protected bike lane, wasn't getting a lot of action. So he's like, "Oh, this is such a waste. It's done so poorly. I'll bet $1,000 to bike education that 3% of the vehicles that go down this avenue aren't, non-cars." And so a local transit advocate, or from the magazine, takes him up on it. And it turns out it was 5%, or maybe 4.5%. So it wasn't that much more, but it was more than 3%.
Yeah,
So
more
true
than
to his
what he
word,
said.
he is. Yeah, time will tell if he follows through on his $1,000. But the thing is, he had $1,000. He could have done that anyway. If he
Right.
did that, then maybe there'd be more bikes going down that protected lane.
For sure.
Because otherwise there weren't that many protected lanes, but I did use the ones that were. And but that was just the last 2 days I was there. I had to use the bike share that was run by Lyft. And of course, because it's a corporation, I don't trust it. So when it says like, "Oh, you're a tourist, you should use the day pass," I'm like, "I'm not paying the day pass." I'm trying to like find ways of paying as little as possible.
Yeah.
But it turns out getting the day pass twice was the cheapest option.
Okay.
It was only after paying $12 for the first ride that I did that I'm like, shit, I should just get the day pass, because I know I'm going to ride at least $20 worth more today.
Yeah.
The conservatory is what I rode out to in the west side of town, and it's very good. It's better than the one in DC. It even has a greenhouse that's just ferns. It's fern house. So it's like, ooh, you're millions of years in the past. Everything's ferns.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was bigger and better than other things like the National Botanical Gardens. And I haven't been to the Botanical Gardens in New York City, so I can't compare to
You
them.
haven't? Why not?
It was just never on my list of things to do. I was going to the Met too much, I guess, or the Natural History Museum, all the things that I did not need to do in Chicago because New York City has the better version. In fact, it hit me that Chicago has a full museum on its own, and then a gallery exhibit in the Fine Arts Museum of miniature rooms. So these are rooms that are miniatures to showcase interior design over the years, decade, century by century. And they're very impressive and cute, and of course fascinating, no matter your age, if to look at the interior design work. But I got to thinking, this doesn't impress me. Why doesn't it impress me? Oh, that's right. The museums in New York City have the full versions of this. We don't need miniature rooms. We have the full rooms. A whole wing of the Brooklyn Museum is just period rooms. So I started laughing at that. And the same goes for the rest of Chicago. It's New York City, but like 70%, like 30% less. Except the water, I guess. Well, no, the ocean. But as far as bodies of water go, its Central Park it only has buildings on two sides of it, Grant Park. The Food Fest was very had a lot of security.
What?
Yeah, the Food Fest was like it was fenced all around. So the entire Grant Park, which is where the 68 riot started, it's a big park.
Sure.
And it was completely fenced around. There were 3 checkpoints that were TSA level, like searching your bag, like really searching it, not just looking in it.
Wow.
And full metal detector, and if he goes off, they gotta wand you. And of course, I was wearing my shoes with the metal in them, so I'm like, it's my shoes, man, it's my shoes. And oh yeah, so while I'm in line, this is just an anecdote here. Girl in front of me is carrying like the bear spray keychain. If you've seen these before,
Yeah.
Has to get confiscated. The security are a third-party security company. It's like, I'm sorry, we gotta take this. It is a weapon. It's a chemical weapon too. And
It's
she's
technical
like,
too, yeah.
and she must be rich enough. She was like letting go of it. She wasn't fighting that, but just know that I'm gonna hold you responsible if something happens to me.
Well, okay.
Right. Like I'm
I don't know
behind
how
her
that's
going,
gonna
like,
work.
this is a food fest. Tastes of Chicago. The fuck have gang wars shootings like happened at these festivals?
Maybe they've swallowed
Probably
their
not.
own propaganda.
I haven't. I think that would be big news if that occurred.
Right.
And there were some cops, but not a lot of cops. But I was definitely feeling the surveillance. That's for sure. As far as other cameras and things like that. I have to look up the band that was playing because she did a shout out for Palestine. And I was surprised. Like I should have not been surprised there was some heckling happening after that, but her doing that surprised me, I suppose, as well. Since like this is but the mayor was there or showing up later. Oh no, or did he show up? No, yeah, he showed up. It was Friday. Friday was nice because the lines weren't so bad, and I actually thought there were a lot of people there. But holy shit, I was wrong. Because I came back Saturday and it was shoulder to shoulder. And this was a big, there's a lot of room. So anyway, on and on about the urbanism, I guess.
Oh, that's all very interesting.
Yeah. So I hopped to a lot of museums.
Did you happen to see Hull House?
I passed by it.
Okay.
I did not tour inside, unfortunately. It wasn't open yet, and I kind of wanted to get to the Mexican Art Museum when that opened because I had the full day. And though technically, based on how fast I went through everything, I probably could have started at Hull House at 10, got to the Mexican Art Museum like 11:30 to 2, and then hit the conservatory. That only took me an hour. I wanted more time for that, or I want to make sure, I got there. So I didn't know how long it would take me to bike there, By the time I got there, I was done. It wasn't even 5 yet, I think. And this is like, I'm in a tourist situation where like after the museums close at 5, maybe, dinner that takes like not a full hour because it's just me. Like, what do I got left to do? So I was desperate enough. I even went to a movie.
Whoa.
In a theater. I saw Deadpool.
Yeah, was it any good?
I'm not I don't like the Marvel movies anymore.
Yeah.
The whole franchise. It's very silly, as you may know. It's Deadpool.
I've seen plenty of them.
But I kind of I will put out a limb and say it was not as good as, it was worse than 2.
Okay.
Or rather, it was doing less than 2, Deadpool 2. And I think that's maybe everything in Phase 4 or 6 or whatever it is.
Whatever we're in now, yeah.
Yeah, whatever phase we're in, everything is sort of less, not coherent. It's just
they don't got much left.
It's an echo of what each phase is an echo of the last one, more or less, or at least after Endgame.
Yeah, right.
Because how do you top that? You just do personal stories, and that's what Deadpool 3 is. It's more of a personal story, but maybe because it's been so long since Deadpool 2, I'm like, I actually forgot where he is in his personal arc. It's really just not coherent. It's just I think at this point there shouldn't be an arc at all, and there kind of isn't, and maybe that's what's weak about it. There isn't an arc. for Deadpool, or there's an arc for Wolverine, but only because like it's going full metaverse. So it's like it's not the Wolverine, it's a Wolverine from a reality where he fucked up.
Sure.
So like it's like
Wolverine.
so it's just so contrived.
Sure.
And it's like where you start with, well, we need a Wolverine who needs an arc. So we'll make up a story using the time cops, basically.
Sure.
Because everything, even the Masters of the Universe are a corporation with a corporate structure.
Right.
With middle managers that can go off the handle and try to destroy a universe. And yet there's no one else in the universe who can do anything about it. They don't show up.
Not. Yeah, they're just
and they do this thing where there's all these other so he goes to the void where you like the things that from other universes, that unneeded things get thrown. So it's a contrivance to then have all of the Fox Marvel characters show up.
Okay.
And I don't think they did enough with them. They just referenced. They're just walking references, which I guess is all you can do at this point when you have movies from literally like 2000, Blade, Elektra, which when they showed up, I'm like, I get,
I remember those,
I saw those. I actually saw those movies. I wonder how many people here even know what these movies are.
I don't remember Elektra.
But it doesn't make me feel special or anything unless there's like, I don't care unless they're doing something cool and fighting for a bit. There's a lot of action. It was all action, which I think there's just better comedy in Deadpool 2. There was comedy in the fighting, and there wasn't actually any comedy, not much between the fighting. I don't know. It just seemed overall weaker. Weaker. The antagonists were weak.
That's too bad.
Because like they're just coming out of nowhere and just like, okay, you're mad because you're abandoned. This is your motivation, and you're like, I'm going to destroy all realities because I'm just that freaking
that petty, apparently.
Petty and bitter. It's just
can't even come up with to save half the universe. We got to kill half the universe thing.
Yeah, but that's my feeling towards Marvel overall, is that the antagonists are always just weaker.
Of course.
In their motivations and characters. Like sometimes they do. Obviously, there's exceptions, of course, but like compared to DC, it's just like no, everyone like they have an ego thing that kind of makes sense for them. Not like, and by DC I mean the animated universe, not really the Snyder films. That's where it's just like he just made shit. He just made shit up. He basically, well, I'll give an example. Lex Luthor's motivation is that he has daddy issues.
Oh wow.
In the Snyder films. And it's stupid. It's dumb. It doesn't fit any other canon or reference material or
straight from the ass,
or intertext. And it's also really dumb. Even if like you can change the motivations and it still works, or it's all like, it's not the Lex Luthor I know, but that's a Lex Luthor.
It's an interesting version.
Like if he was black or just a corporate skeezy type or something, or if he was a tech bro, but he's a tech bro with daddy issues. And that's kind of what needed to be pointed out. He's always going on about his father and how like, they think he's a god, it's like Superman never said he's a god. It's like, it's usually the Lex Luthor archetype is usually that, like, if he's going to be like antagonistic, right, he is, but like he hates Superman because he's an alien, and it's a xenophobic, anti-immigrant narrative that meta narrative you go with.
Dangerous, literally is a dangerous, literal alien. Yeah,
and if you don't go that way, you go with like Superman thinks he's so great, but I'm the one saving humanity. Right. I'm the one helping people by providing all these jobs and building infrastructure, even though he's super. It's always on his terms. Right. So that's like, so it's subtle, or it's not over your head about what makes Luthor bad. But when you go that way, it's like he has to go too far. You have to make him crazy at the end, where it's just like he only cares about killing Superman.
Right.
And that sometimes can work, but because it's effective after you basically see him through all of these stories where it's just like, no, I'm actually the good guy. And Superman is not really a bad guy, but he does not he's not of humanity. I'm of humanity, but he doesn't care about humanity. No, he cares about humanity in the abstract, kind of way, not people. People are just tools. Anyway,
Yeah.
There's better portrayals.
Definitely.
Long digression there.
Hey, no problem.
Back to Chicago. I got so I went to the book fair. That was kind of the way why I went this weekend and not like later in the month, which
Sure.
I kind of should have as far as weather wise. It was pretty warm. It was much warmer than I wanted it to be. For the Windy City, it was not actually that chilly and there was not that much wind. So I got from the punk bookstore, Art Charney Speaks. So this is sort of like a punk graphic designer. And this is basically a collection of his blog posts where he he critiques corporate design and particularly the kind of elitism by thinking of graphic design as a high art. It's like, no, it's just commercial art, if even. It's just a commercial process whose purpose is to influence, as propaganda.
Yeah. Maybe
I got an old book, The New Speechogram Technique for Persuasive Public Speaking. Very old, really old style, but I sort of liked the format and the way it sort of kind of breaks down like the perfect speech, or the foolproof speech.
Okay.
And the kind of elements that make that up, because a lot of like public speaking materials don't go technical with it. I guess this is a very mid-century way of doing things.
That's cool.
And the fourth is the newer kind of book from Haymarket Books, because Haymarket was there, obviously, is No Adult Against Adult Supremacy. So I have, I do have the Abolish the Family book and other such kind of abolitionists. This is sort of articles and writings against adult supremacy, like liberation of children, which is another form of abolishing the family, or at least it's a part of it.
Sure.
So it's certainly a part of it that I'm not well read on, and so to have a nice compilation book was on my list. Maybe I'll do a family abolition reader or something like that. I've got like a radical feminist book as well, so eventually I'll have half a bookshelf. One of these will be like just readers of various radical within the most like abolitionist framework.
That's cool.
Yeah. And maybe more books on like housing law or something like that. I need something after this trip. I think as vacations are meant to refresh you, I need to get more focused on what I really want to do, because the whole summer as well as the spring has kind of been, the spring was focused on the Stein petitioning, but it was also the library board. And then maybe I'm just kind of been waiting for people to kind of recruit me, or I've asked, I'm stepping up, but I'm waiting on them to follow through with doing the thing with me. And like the slow motion thing is sort of how the band is happening. It's going in the slow motion mode because my bandmate, he is the opposite of me. His ADHD, as this is his interpretation, causes him to can never be alone, has to always be doing something social, and thus is always going to dance conferences and parties and all kinds of things. And he's built up all of this catalog of communities he's a part of, and that includes community projects, right? Communities are made up of these projects, and one of them is a caroling group, and that's through. Yeah, and that's of other state workers too. That's just state workers.
Oh wow!
In his building,
state workers,
which makes me wonder, like, what can I organize in my building? But I'm not going to work there. I don't feel like I'm not working in any building long enough, unless I don't know. But because there isn't some master state workforce bulletin board. And of course, within a building, putting things up on bulletin boards isn't. You have to go through channel, whatever.
The proper channels.
There's rules.
Or you'll receive a nasty memo.
I'll have to ask him how he didn't get this started. He was just co-organizing, but then one of them fell out or something happened. So it's just one of those bumps of life. So he's had to take it over, and that basically means he can't. We can still practice, and we'll try to still do some things, but it means until January, it's like he's like filled up, and he does not stop. Which I'm sort of envious of, but also kind of
I couldn't do it now.
It kind of like gives me the ooglies at the same time too. Yeah, exactly. Just going 3 days in a row is like burns me out. But then it also makes me feel like a total failure with how much he's doing and the communities he's built, and I'm kind of left like, what kind of community do I have? A few sort of friends I can hang out with, maybe sometimes, and. Anyway, yeah, I could wax on it, but I don't want to just feel sorry about myself. That's not healthy.
No.
But I just turned 36, so what the fuck am I supposed to do? Anyway,
36 is not so bad. I'm turning.
Oh yeah.
I'm turning 42 in November. So.
I mean, hell, I should just be proud that everyone was asking me about flying, like, oh, when you're flying to Chicago, like, I'm not flying, I take the train. and yeah, I did have a wonderful conversation on the way back
about that too.
with a granny type person from Pittsfield, Cecilia, goes by C. So I talked with her, and I didn't have any cards on me, but I definitely had her bookmark. I showed her how to bookmark things in her OS on her phone. Because you didn't know how to do bookmarks. How many people do not like the joke about having 1 million tabs open?
That's me.
It's because you don't know how to make bookmarks. So
I just never remember my bookmarks. I got ADHD. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and then I forget about it.
Well, the toolbar.
The toolbar. I mean, what's the difference?
You can only fit so many, but I suppose, can file things in folders on the toolbar, and I know where things roughly are. Or I name the folders well enough that it's like, well,
sure. As you're browsing through, sure.
Mm-hmm. You can't really always do that in your house, but obviously, if you do have ADHD, that's definitely one of the ways of managing it is to just label every drawer, right? Does that help you?
I haven't tried the labels yet. I suppose that would work. No, I have a lot of hooks for my clothes so I can see them.
Yeah. And super shelves.
Yeah.
So that everything is really just, instead of having piles, it's just you cover many surfaces.
I mean, I would just have a rack of laundry baskets if my wife would tolerate that, but I don't think
with the right shelving, everything is possible. The sky's the limit, or the ceiling's the limit.
So I'm curious about the route that train takes. Do you dip down through Pennsylvania? Taking the train?
No. It hugs Lake Erie and goes to Buffalo. It's a Lakeshore Limited, and oh god, yeah, it's crazy. So a few negative people that came along the way. So, and a lot of Amish, a lot of Mennonites take the train. I didn't seem to notice them the last time when I took the train in Chicago in 8 years ago. I don't remember any.
Yeah,
and this time, half the car were Mennonites.
Oh, interesting.
So either something big was happening, but they were both on the train when I was going and coming back. So I think this is just a regular means of travel for people who don't have cars and don't use cars.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes me wonder why I don't see them more often. But I guess once you're in Western New York, you're going to see them traveling to the Midwest and back. But that's just a thing of note. So I stayed at a hostel, not so much a youth hostel, but like a hostel in the middle of the hotel.
Sure.
Not back. It was in the middle of the hotel district, so you had a lot of people using it as a standard hotel.
Okay.
Which sort of changes the tone and the feel and the vibe of it versus a youth hostel that's maybe more cooperative in nature,
Sure.
where there is more of like a canteen with shared breakfast kind of areas, study rooms, and just more of a, you know, like the kind of stuff that a co-op would have, including stocking the front room, the front desk with earplugs and other such accoutrements,
Sure.
and having a bulletin boards with all the activism stuff happening or something, community stuff. Well, none of that was at this place, and
Okay.
they just kind of they have a bar, so that just shows what
That
kind
was
of
the
part of
meeting
town you're
place.
in.
Yeah.
Bar, but like in the lobby area, they called it the lobby, but it was just a big lounge. So I started treating it as a lounge, and they said like, "Oh, we can't have you sleeping." I was taking a nap my last day because I didn't have my room anymore. I checked out, so it's like, "Oh, we can't have you napping here." You know, in the lobby. I'm like, "This is the lobby. This is behind the elevators."
Right.
But I get it. It's a general hangout area. So anyway, on Sunday, thankfully they just stayed one night. There were some Texas party boys of indeterminate age, but roughly lower 20s.
Oh no.
And the first thing, the one from El Paso who was like a Mexican or a Chicano, first thing he asked me is, "Do you want any white?"
Wow.
And I'm like, there's three things that
Just,
could be. I don't want any of those.
Yeah.
So I say, no, thank you. He then asks if I'm cool with him smoking. And I'm like, I'm assuming weed, because they do have weed too.
Sure.
And so I crack the window open and say, sure. And I gesture him towards the window, you know, assuming that party boys know that they should be smoking near a window in a really small room with strangers. But no, by smoking, he meant doing lines. And him and the other guy just start doing lines with the whole bill thing. Like,
really?
Like, can't you just get a straw, like a reusable thing that you would use? You're like, but I guess the point is you don't have something like that, because that would be Coke paraphernalia or something. Sure. It never reminds me of my housemate who says, because he used to do a lot more Coke when he was younger, that's like Coke ruins the party. That's what he says now. And I certainly remember.
Not so for the these people guys doing it, but for everybody else, yeah.
I think that was his point, but because they are super obnoxious. So when talking to the other roommate, who is of mixed descent, Egyptian and Scottish, and so he's sort of spent more time in Scotland, but also kind of flips between places in the UAE. But I guess that's just because he's a globetrotting kind of guy with a lot of money. But he's also studying medicine, and he is going to do so in Chicago. But I guess he was looking for, I don't know what he was doing. He just seemed to be wasting time for the week, actually, because for most of the days he was just walking around, but like not doing anything actively. Kind of odd. But such as youth, I guess. When asked about like where he's from, he mentioned Scotland, I guess, and he goes on a rant about how there's no freedom of speech in England, like from Tim Pool,
like the libel law sort of a thing, or
yeah, something like that, or just some random stories from Tim Pool or something like that. I sort of was like, oh god, does this guy watch Tim Pool?
Oh god, I hope not. I hope just like international at this point.
Keep my mouth shut. Obviously, they were just in the room long enough to do their coke and get back out there. But it's like it took a lot. So they were like, they never used a hostel before, and so they were kind of like tripping over like how there were strangers in the room and they're like sharing the room, and they're like, oh man, how am I gonna bring back a bitch here? Yeah. Or it's like, are you guys cool? I bring back some honeys, and I'm like, no, it's not I'd appreciate it if you didn't. Yeah. And I'm kind of phrasing it like not a parent, but an adult. And of course, I should just say, and eventually we both have, me and the other guy Andrew, have to say like, no, don't bring anyone back here. Yeah, just do it out there. Get a different room or something. Right. Obviously, there's options.
Let other people sleep.
Why would you want to have sex here? With us in the room. We're gonna be sleeping.
Right.
dumbass. Anyway, so the guy was like obviously not has ruined his mind. It'd be funny if it wasn't actually really sad that like these guys 25 or whatever have just ruined their brains with the drugs they've been doing, because they did a lot of it even to start. So I don't know, and they came back at 6 a.m. so I only had to listen to their obnoxious snoring for just an hour or so before I just like, you know what, I'll just get up at 7:30. You know why? I've slept enough. I went to bed early, you know, because I don't have anything to do in the evening. It's not like I got a computer to fill time. So yeah, being away from my computer for a week, it's I can't say it's refreshing, but I spent the weekend catching up on, I guess. And what else? What other kind of people? Oh yeah, there's a man from China, but he lived in New York, so we were able to bond about that.
That's cool.
He was working for the YouTube channel The Take.
Oh
I don't know if
yeah,
you've heard of that one. So he was doing some of the
sure I've seen
graphics for that. But of course it's all a la carte, and they were like his Visa sponsor, but things weren't working out, or they were going to fire him, so he was prematurely leaving.
Sucks.
He was just cutting it off prematurely.
Yeah.
So it didn't come to that. But so he doesn't have his visa, so he basically has like a week before he needs to leave the country or something else. And so he's spending
overstays visa.
But he's not the poorest, I guess. But he had the money to do a cross country trip, so he's got to make the most of his week by seeing the most of this beautiful land before he has to go back to Fujian. But he has family in LA, so maybe he kind of referred to going there and figuring out what the next move is. So there's that.
Interesting.
So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
I always meet interesting people in hostels. That's one of my favorite things about them. Just a variety of people.
Yeah, as long as it's definitely quiet after, and they were after like actually really early. So the lights could go out really early, which is sort of, but the room's so small. There was a small couch in there, which is sort of like, oh, this is even better than other hostels. They don't even have any other furniture
usually
besides
not,
the beds.
bunk
Not
beds,
barrack style. They were bunk beds. They were actually bunk beds, but they were like, they didn't have headboards, so you couldn't sit up in them or anything like that. So I don't know what some of these guys were in the beds, but they were, I guess, facing the wall, so they could kind of lean on the wall. I didn't have that. What else about Chicago? Oh yeah, the food tour. Got the deep dish pizza.
Yeah.
The Italian beef, which is like a Philly cheesesteak, but instead of cheese, it's Italian seasoning. And whatever.
That doesn't sound as good.
It kind of wasn't. It would have been if they had put more provolone than the one slice when I got provolone, like I paid for the toppings.
Oh, you had to pay extra for the cheese.
And it was, you know how it is with places, like it's either the right amount or too much, or it's too little, right? And of course it's Goldilocks, I guess. And sometimes when you get the peppers added, it's just two fucking strips of peppers. Not like the works on it, or like, peppers and onions, or which is what it should have freaking been. And provolone, like multiple slices, so it's nice and gooey along the bread, but it was just like two, so I could taste it, but it wasn't enough. Not for how much meat's on that bun.
Not much to it.
Yeah. I did get a loaded hot dog that was like this big, thankfully, because I wouldn't want a loaded hot dog bigger than that, because it was starting to hurt my teeth, actually.
Oh, really?
Somehow.
Like the vinegar from the ketchup? Or...
Yeah, and the mustard. I hate mustard. But I couldn't help it. Well, I actually just don't like loaded hot dogs, because I prefer to be in with the hot dog, not on it.
Sure. It's a lot to manage, that's for sure.
I couldn't resist, I guess, because it was Taste of Chicago, so it's like every
you gotta experience the whole thing. Yeah,
they have a $5 item.
So,
but I did get $5. Everyone had a $5 item, which was nice. Then and I also got like Venezuelan style poutine, where the fries are yuca fries.
Come about. Interesting.
I'll explain. Yeah. So you start with yuca fries, and then you put pulled pork,
sure,
and then queso cheese, and onions.
I mean, that sounds
So-
so much better than actual poutine. I might actually go for that.
Unfortunately, it was such a small amount. I would have loved more of it.
Yeah.
And maybe I should have, but I was already getting full. It was the first night, so I was actually able to get to multiple stalls. It turned out the only one with a line was the one I really wanted to try, which was like an African faso chicken. But by Saturday, it was so packed. It was you only get one thing. So I got brisket fries, which I assumed was going to be nachos with pulled pork, barbecue sauce, and cheddar cheese or something.
Yeah.
With onions. But no, it was like actual nachos, but with the pulled pork in there. So it was more like a garbage plate.
So just a pile of everything.
Which is, as by its name, garbage.
Yeah.
I still ate it. I was hungry. And
it gets
it
too
wasn't
soggy at some point, though. Like, you know.
Well, like it was nachos with the pulled pork with a little bit of barbecue sauce, but not a lot. But they put actual salsa with beans on one side and like a shitload of jalapenos on the other. More jalapenos I could ever eat. And I kind of wish like there wasn't that description. Some of the stalls did have descriptions.
So spinning the wheel.
But this one seemed to assume that when you have brisket nachos, that it's not some fusion dish. It's actually just nachos with brisket in it.
Yeah.
Which is just fuck. It's not because it's not even like it's barbecued pork, not carnitas, you know. But I did get street tacos and they were good.
Right.
And I think if you asked me what was best, I was probably the street tacos.
Street tacos.
Yeah.
It's hard to mess up street tacos, but yeah.
True. Though this seems to keep happening where because of not using Spanish, though I don't know why it would mess it up, but you say two, and so you list, I say 2 tacos, one pork, one of the other kind. And then they try to confirm the order by asking, you want this and this? And then they interpret it as being, and I say, yes, just 2. Say, oh, okay, so you want 2 pork and then one of these. So you get 3.
Oh, interesting.
You get one more taco than you want it.
Sure.
But it's so it's $10 instead of 6. But it's not, it's not like a huge amount of money. But museums are nice. The Contemporary had a lot of good stuff. There's this artist named Nicole Eisenman, who's kind of radical West Village type, and she's been doing monumental, like satirical paintings the last decade. U.S. political satire, but in the form of monumental paintings. So she's always the type to like mix a bunch of references.
That's cool. What'd you say that her name was?
Nicole Eisenman. In her youth, she did paintings where she like would flip roles, where she had women hunting men, or Amazonian sculpted men, like women, kidnapping men and turning them into a foosball table. Yeah, trippy stuff. She also had this. She had a sketch where it was like lesbian recruitment station, and it was basically a line of women, and like they're basically getting like these lap dances or massages from other lesbians.
Cool,
funny sense of humor there.
Yeah, I love a sense of humor. I think that's
because she started her career in like the 80s or late 80s. So okay, so let's get to videos.
Yeah,
we only have an hour left now. So Communist Manifesto, the really, really short version, 3 minutes. Did we read that together yet?
That was the very first thing I read on this channel. This is before I made any connections with anybody. So no, gotcha. we have not read that together. We should do that sometime because, well,
there's 100 other things.
Right.
If you've already done it.
My audio was terrible early on. Not that it's like
it's
super professional now, but
before you get the better mic.
I had the better mic. I didn't know how to use it yet. So like,
okay.
there's like doubling and there was noise feedback. It was bad. It was bad.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, let's take a look at the Communist Manifesto.
From short form. So not even a leftist channel, maybe, but they do a good job here.
Yeah,
Nice little pamphlet version.
pamphlet of a pamphlet.
The Communist Manifesto has literally been banned, censored, and mocked all over the world for almost 200 years. When Marx and Engels wrote the manifesto in 1848, communism was already a dirty word. Word on the street is that it's stupid or evil, that it doesn't work and never will. But how many of us even know what the manifesto says? How many of us have read it? Have you?
Yep.
In the opening section of the manifesto, Marx and Engels say that the history of human society is a story of class struggles. But by 1848, when the manifesto was written, something had happened that changed the hierarchy forever: the Industrial Revolution and the colonization of America. That combination allowed a completely new class to rise to the top, the bourgeoisie, which we'll call the capital class. Back in the day, we had royal families and so-called Holy Roman Emperors. But the capital class isn't like that. The capital class dominates via cold, hard cash. The manifesto says that when the capital class shattered the world's hierarchies, it basically left two other classes: the middle class and the working class, which Marx and Engels call the proletariat. These days, if you work for a company or if you have a boss, you're
They don't mention the middle class.
Yeah, they don't really call it the middle class. They maybe refer to class. Do they even refer to class traders in the manifesto?
Well, I think they used. I mean, maybe this was later, but they're using the petty bourgeois,
Petty bourgeois. Yeah, perhaps that's what they meant.
referring to like private professionals and other such things.
Yeah, those
which
you know,
business owning professionals.
Yeah,
and such.
Shopkeepers, people that tend to work alongside their workers rather than just have workers.
Yeah, they're not quite capitalists because they're the base of the they're in the market society that the capitalist class is actually feeding off of.
Yeah.
Or extracting. So thus small business owners are also very, very alienated and squeezed, and do have real concerns when it comes to costs and whatnot. But at the same time, they're called petty bourgeois because they're the petty version of a capitalist.
Yeah,
they want to be
sure
a capitalist, but they're not yet, though they think of them.
Yeah, they adopt their culture, their mindset, and they would turn on the working class if push came to shove. And I think that's the real key point.
Or rather, they already have by becoming petty bourgeois.
Sure, yeah.
Like when someone becomes an entrepreneur, unless they're a social one or starting a B Corp.
Right.
Well,
but like if there was a worker uprising, they would be taking the side of the capitalist class.
Well, they get out their shotgun and gun down anyone who would threaten their property.
As happened in such instances as like the LA riot when they were just getting on top of their storefronts and shooting at people.
And a slighter version in 2020, but not as frequent, I guess. It wasn't as blatant.
The outright killing of.
It was more right-wing groups that were kind of going out to do that themselves, not the actual owners in the figure
themselves. Yeah,
which kind of shows how things have maybe shifted. That even like because all those businesses weren't locally owned shopkeepers, immigrants, they weren't around, so they didn't have to care, and the insurance will cover it.
Yeah,
but certain small business owners, well, they don't have good insurance.
Right.
That's a lot of cost. It's another, cost.
Sure.
Okay.
Moving on. So yeah, a little bit of a mischaracterization so far, but not too bad.
They're trying to use words that
probably
people
a member
know.
of the working class, and that means you're being exploited. As resources get more scarce and as markets get more saturated, it gets harder to turn a profit. So the modern way to save money is to pay less and less for labor. So we're paid as little as possible. We're given the fewest possible benefits. And if we quit, get too sick to work, or even die, the company we work for just replaces us. That's where the manifesto's most subversive point comes in. It says revolution is inevitable. That's because every time the capital class decreases our wages or takes away our rights and property, it puts us all on the same page. There are billions of us, and we're letting a few thousand people kick the crap out of us. When everyone gets that, the world will change. The next section of the manifesto is probably the bit that gets quoted the most. In it, Marx and Engels describe what they think a society built by and for the working class might look like. One of the manifesto's biggest ideas is that in a working class future, the goal of production is not to create profit, it's to create access. Marx and Engels suggest that everyone should have equal access to the benefits of society, technology, and resources. When Marx and Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto, they included a lot more ideas like this. We don't have time to cover them all, but hopefully you're getting the general idea. And maybe, just maybe, you're starting to see why some people would rather we believe the manifesto is evil without actually reading it.
Oh, that's good.
Cute.
To the point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, just that quick pithy quote of like production for access,
yeah,
not profit.
that is a huge
Because
shift.
if you just say production for people or the people, it's very nebulous. It's like using they.
Right.
They tried to kill Trump again.
God, yeah. Wow. All right, let's move on to something else then. What else do we want to look at? Yield and urban agriculture.
Whatever you float your boat.
Yeah.
Nothing in particular I'm wedded to, so they're not in any particular order or formation.
Yeah, you can do one.
Because it's all stuff I've added the last year.
Sure.
Or 6 months. So
let's do this one on what is it? Proportional. Proportional past the
voting.
post, sort of proportional representation.
It's 2024. The government is stable, popular, and not divided in any way. Confidence in leadership is high, there's no two-party system, and voters can be sure that Britain is governed by the people, for the people. Now, there may be a... Hang on. Hello, now you can see me. As I was saying, there may be a few that like the status quo, but some of us, quite a lot of us, don't, and believe that fixing the mess we're in requires radical change to the way we elect our politicians. And I think I've got the solution, but it's gonna need us to go back in time to 1987. Politics nerds and or people old enough to remember will probably have seen this video of a middle-aged John Cleese talking about why we need PR, aka proportional representation. The clearest and arguably most damning
But no one ever advocated for
was
that.
this diagram showing then third place party.
It's been political over the years.
With
Cool.
26% of the popular votes and 3.5% of the seats, dramatic zoom included. But that was a long time ago. 37 years later, how do our recent elections compare? To quantify my observations, I'm going to use what's called the DV score, deviation from proportionality. Basically, with this calculation, it's not as scary as it looks. You can measure how well the number of votes a party gets nationally reflects the number of seats they get in the Commons. 0 means that Parliament perfectly represents every single voter, and 100 is dictatorship. So obviously the goal is to get the number as low as possible. And no representative system can get to 0, but a number of about 5 to 8 would be considered a good outcome. Here are the PR systems used by the devolved governments, and here is the system we use in national elections, first past the post. As you can see, it's not great. Also, don't be fooled by 2017. It was a mathematical outlier that only happened because the election was a close two-horse race and there was no third party to split the vote and thus increase the score. Nothing to do with first past the post being any good. And the fact that in 2015, the DV score was 24, almost a quarter of the way to a dictatorship, with other elections not very much better either, clearly shows that first past the post always was and will always remain a broken system to run elections. But going back to the previous graph, what if I told you there was a system that did this? 1.3 in 2010, 2.9 in 2015, 1.9 in 2017, and 2.3 in 2019. It outperforms first past the post, all other PR systems, and the target of 5 for these systems to hit. It also eliminates tactical voting, is easy to understand, and keeps a local MP. Would you like to hear more? You'd like to hear more? Well,
Yes.
fasten your seatbelts, unfasten
I sure
them,
would.
fasten them again, but a bit
By the way, this
faster
is cold
time.
for me.
My
I haven't
name
read
is
it.
Gabriel Haynes, introducing to you
I
my
watched this
invention,
one.
proportional past the post, triple P for short. And yes, the jazz hands and drum roll was necessary. So how does it work? It's very simple. Similar to the ballots in Wales or New Zealand, when you go to the polls, you get 2 votes. One vote, the candidate vote, is a cross in the box for your favourite candidate to represent your local area, and the other, the party vote, decides the maximum number of seats each party can win in Parliament. Once all areas of the UK have counted their votes, using this formula, quotas are allocated to each party as the maximum number of seats they can win in Parliament. For example, if Labour won 13.6 million votes out of a potential 30 million, this would give the party 294.67 seats, which will be rounded up to 295 to avoid seat shortages when allocating MPs to constituencies. Ordered from highest to lowest and then working our way down the list, seats are allocated to parties based on which of their candidates won the largest share of candidate votes in their constituencies. Any candidates in seats that have already been allocated or in parties that have already reached their quota get skipped. This continues until each candidate has been allocated or rejected a seat. If all candidates in a constituency represent parties that have already filled their quotas, then the seat goes to the plurality winner. And that's it. Ranked by vote share, allocate seats to the highest performing candidates until each party gets proportional representation and all seats have been filled. If you understand most or all of that, then we can definitely say the system is simple. But what other problems does it solve? Well, let's start with tactical voting. In the fortnight before the last election, nearly a third of voters said to a poll they plan to use their vote tactically to prevent the party they disliked from winning their seat. This is likely out of fear of the spoiler effect. 2 main parties of one political leaning splitting the vote, thus letting the party opposite in policy win the seat, even though they had a minority of support overall. In Triple P, because the party vote isn't bound by region and victories favour strong relative performance over winning pluralities, there is no spoiler effect, which would greatly reduce voter disenfranchisement and elect MPs that are liked the most as opposed to hated.
Well, that's kind of, yeah, pause.
Between winning pluralities and getting elected also greatly reduces
Pause.
the
So,
power
like-
of gerrymandering.
There we go.
Yeah. So you vote for, you kind of, it doesn't stop. I mean, it doesn't include like preferential side of things, because each voter is really just making one choice again, right?
Yeah.
Even though they're making 2 general choices, but by voting for party, I suppose that can be a more general preference, even if locally it's, I
Yeah.
guess.
You want.
But I don't know, how does it stop tactical voting? But I guess because it's not on a local seat, district level. But I guess the assumption is that the person running in that area is bound to the district,
Yeah.
or would they be? They wouldn't have to be. But I guess if it's by, you're voting within a district, you're voting, so. This is definitely like one of those, you can take the 5 different kind of voting system reforms and you can sort of make different combinations of them. And they each sort of have their pros and cons. And as far as reform coalitions go, you just simply say you're for all 5 of them. And so whatever combination you kind of end up with in the writing of the language of what's passed and what's implemented, that sort of, I suppose step 1 is like to have a committee to reform the election system. And then they're finagling what it's going to be, versus outside of, say, a parliamentary process in a legislature where the coalition needs to figure out exactly what reform they're going to push for based on, well, how they gather support will be based on, or if they gather support will be based on them picking the right kind of reform, or they attract support by having the elements in combination. I guess that's the most popular, but people can't really say what they think should be most popular without knowing all these different elements, which is sort of a weakness, right? It's a lot of education you have to do, when really you should just pick one reform and then just educate people on that. against objections of like, well, it doesn't solve everything, or it doesn't solve the thing I want it to. So if it was one of the alternatives, maybe it would. Because like I need to hear an argument of why this is better than say star voting. It's just like the thing is like there really isn't one knock it out of the park, especially when you get the math involved. In which case, like you get that if you really get into the math, it's like there's no such thing as a representative voting system. It's just impossible. There's always got to be some kind of weakness. Which I found a video and I don't think I bookmarked it yet. It's weird because I thought it was too esoteric, I guess. Anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like that's what he was measuring. It was how close to representative it gets, and his big argument is that it does get much closer than any of the current systems.
True, right, using that metric.
Yeah.
Certainly 8 years ago, I think this is what I would have envisioned as being like maybe proportional representation that the layperson can easily understand.
Yeah,
but you're still
it seems
voting
like a
because people
simple
want to
system,
vote. Because generally, like if asked, or just based on the culture, people want to vote for one person. They think it's authoritarian to vote for just a party. In fact, most Americans, right, the independents, the non-party, but just people who don't vote regularly, they think of themselves as politically independent. I don't want to join a party. I'm not a joiner.
Yeah.
Joining an organization,
Vote for a person, not for a party.
You're right. I'm for a person, not a party.
Yeah.
So people want to vote for persons, even if they're a member of a party. But so how would independent candidates be seated then? Well, I guess if they win, they're automatically seated, even if there's the proportional party vote. I guess is independent one of the party choices.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is in Britain. I don't know if you can vote. You can run as an independent. No, I guess Corbyn's doing that. So actually,
okay.
Huh? Yeah. In fact, I watched a video, and maybe I could save that for later. Is how things are gelling over there, where you have independent left, basically labor people getting kicked out of labor, or people who are actually left wing, so they're not going to be in labor anymore and running independent, and their alliance with the Greens, that they're not joining the Greens because apparently the Greens, don't have enough socialists in them yet, or because it's a coalition of both socialists and non-socialists. And apparently the Labor people like Corbyn getting kicked out because they're socialists. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
A little complicated in that way, but we have the same kind of issues here, but they actually,
yeah.
But their Bernie Sanders has actually left their major party and is actually running. Well, actually, I guess it's the opposite of Bernie's career. Bernie was always independent, but will caucus with the Dems and then becomes a Dem so he can run for higher office. Corbyn, being in the Labor Party and being the Labor, one of the leaders, runs for higher office, but that leads to him being independent.
Ends up being independent. I think Bernie still is listed as independent, even though he will caucus with the Dems. But
didn't he have to register as Dem to run in the 2020 primary?
I think that was just for the presidential election. I think.
And he's changed back.
I think he changed back. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Let's look at the weakened power of gerrymandering.
Yeah. Any proportional system will do this. Because it's not by district anymore, so the district
right, yeah. So you can't pack and crack districts, yeah.
But then again, if the winner of the district, who gets seated, is still based on
any other system.
Well, I guess it doesn't matter. The party registration doesn't matter as much now. It is in fact personal popularity.
Sure.
But I suppose if you think of candidates as being tied to the party, a party, and I vote for the Republican no matter who it is. That's not getting changed at all. It's still first past the post for who gets seated.
Sure.
Which I guess isn't so important to me. But again, if the party vote is higher, like let's say the Green Party or let's say Socialist Party gets 5-10% of the votes, but then in all these districts, no socialist gets the plurality vote.
What I'm wondering about is what
Did he? Can you go
what
back
happens?
and see?
Yeah.
Maybe I think he was going a little too fast. But when he goes for that explanation, a little forward. There.
I think it's about here.
And 2.3 in 2019. It outperforms first past the post, all other PR systems, and the target of 5 for these systems to hit. It also eliminates tactical voting, is easy to understand, and keeps your local MP. Would you like to hear more?
Yeah.
You'd like to hear more? Well, fasten your seatbelts, unfasten them, then fasten them again, but a bit tighter this time. My name is Gabriel Haynes, introducing to you my invention, proportional past the post, triple P for short. And yes, the jazz hands and drum roll was necessary. So how does it work? It's very simple. Similar to the ballots in Wales or New Zealand, when you go to the polls, you get 2 votes. One vote, the candidate vote, is a cross in the box for your favourite candidate to represent your local area, and the other, the party vote, decides the maximum number of seats each party can win in Parliament. Once all areas of the UK have counted their
Maximum
votes,
but not
using
minimum?
this formula, quotas are
Right,
allocated.
that's what I'm having trouble with.
Maximum number of seats.
Maximum number of seats. So they may not win. So I guess that does mean they may not win any seats, right?
Let's say Republicans win all of these first past the post like candidate
Contest, yeah.
votes, right?
Yeah.
So but because let's say they only get 50% of the party vote because of gerrymandering, let's say because of gerrymandering,
Sure, yeah.
they win all of the things. But I guess because of the party vote only being 50%, only half of them will
Only
still
have
get
them
seated.
get seated, and then
And so
but who
it
does
goes
go
to the
after
second
that?
place. So let's see,
Second.
PPP quotas by party, 2019 example. So let's scroll, go through that scroll.
To each party as the maximum number of seats they can win in Parliament. For example, if Labour won 13.6 million votes out of a potential 30 million, this would give the party 294.67 seats, which will be rounded up to 295 to avoid seat shortages when allocating MPs to constituencies. Ordered from highest to lowest and then working our way down the list, seats are allocated to parties based on which of their candidates won the largest share of candidate votes in their constituencies.
Can you pause?
Candidates in seats that
I see.
I want-
So it seems like
I want to see that last graph.
it sounded to me like each of these individual candidates are basically running against each other. So this Chole got the most
Yeah.
individual votes.
Uh-huh.
So he's first seated then, and then you just go down. So basically, all these people are running against each other.
No.
all
These
at
are
the same time.
constituencies. These are places. This is for the party. He's showing the
okay.
party
So,
vote.
yeah,
He's
that's
not
all
showing
wrong
any.
then. Yeah,
Can you slow it down to half speed, maybe?
sure thing.
It's unfortunate he's not like putting bullet points of like the steps.
Yeah.
That's what most of these kind of videos do. When you go fast, it's like you're making some kind of pitch.
in
and-
Wales or New Zealand, when you go to the polls, you get 2 votes. One vote, the candidate vote, is a cross in the box for
You
your
can go
favourite
forward, we know
candidate
this.
to represent your local area, and the other votes
Sorry.
using this formula. Quotas are allocated to each party as the maximum number of seats they can win in Parliament. For example, if Labour won 13.6 million votes out of a potential 30 million, this would give the party 294.67 seats, which would be rounded up to 295 to avoid seat shortages when allocating MPs to constituencies. Ordered from highest to lowest and then working our way down the list, seats are allocated to parties based on which of their candidates won the largest share of candidate votes in their constituencies. Any candidates in seats that have already been allocated or in parties that have already reached their quota get skipped. This continues until each candidate has
So
been
no, I
allocated.
think I was right on that. It just didn't show the candidate's name because they said.
Oh,
that-
okay. I think I get it.
So
now.
in Chole, the other party, whatever the dude's name or lady's name was,
Yeah.
got 90% of the share. So they're the first in line to get seated.
Yeah, another get seated. Yeah.
I see.
Well, it's like it's that a party has to be dominant in order to have their candidates seated first in those constituencies, which is the word for district in UK. So you need both a high vote turnout and a good party turnout, I guess, which is sort of natural, but how does that help? Well, I guess it does allow smaller parties to exist and get seats. But again, once they hit a maximum, but the maximum, what determines what districts that a party wins in or gets, the candidate gets seated, is based on whether they won by a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's how it's working.
Yeah.
So, but what if the Republican wins by a lot in all of them? But I guess so I guess there's going to be a top, let's say Republicans get a 35% party vote.
Yeah.
So after they're going to look at the top 35% of the districts their candidate won in.
Right.
And those are the 35 out of 100
first.
who will be seated.
Yeah.
And then after that, let's say if they still came out on top, but not in the 35th top 35, then those are just going to be dropped, and then it's going to be the
next one,
the second place winner.
That's an interesting way to do it.
It's definitely the fact that we've had to work this out.
But the thing of it is, though, is the actual act of voting and choosing who you're voting for. That seems pretty simple and straightforward. So in terms of sellability, seems like it wouldn't be that hard.
I mean, it's not like there isn't some background work that occurs with our voting system and election systems now.
Yeah.
It's just
fucking electoral college
presented or talked about in mainstream media like it's super simple and we don't need to care about it. But then as soon as someone asks and well, I do care about how the votes are counted or how the machines are owned and operated.
Sure.
Or what's with all of these steps and that involve all of these elected and appointed people.
Or what's with all these ballots being shoved under tables or coming out from under tables?
I don't know if that's what people trust or not, but just that it isn't I don't know. I guess any bureaucracy is what sets reactionaries off, because they just will hate and distrust any bureaucracy. I've been trained to.
Yeah.
It's always seen as an obstacle. So it's why can't it just be simple?
Keep it simple, stupid.
As if, any kind of institution can operate without any bureaucracy.
All right.
So, including their own. Okay, so let's continue. You can go forward a little bit or continue from here.
Of candidate votes in their constituencies. Any candidates in seats that have already been allocated or in parties that have already reached their quota get skipped. This continues until each candidate has been allocated or rejected a seat. If all candidates in a constituency represent parties that have already filled their quotas, then the seat goes to the plurality winner. And that's it. Ranked by vote share, allocate seats to the highest performing candidates until each party gets proportional representation and all seats have been filled. If you understand most or all of that, then we can definitely say the system is simple. But what other problems does it solve? Well, let's start with tactical voting. In the fortnight before the last election, nearly a third of voters said to a poll they plan to use their vote tactically to prevent a party they disliked from winning their seat. This is likely out of fear of the spoiler effect. Two main parties of one political leaning splitting the vote, thus letting the party opposite in policy win the seat, even though they had a minority of support overall. In Triple P, because the party vote isn't bound by region and victories favour strong relative performance over winning pluralities, there is no spoiler effect. which would greatly reduce voter disenfranchisement and elect MPs that are liked the most as opposed to hated the least. The weakened link between winning pluralities and getting elected also greatly reduces the power of gerrymandering to an extent not comparable with any other system that maintains a local MP. In all PR systems with single-member constituencies, proportionality requires the use of a party list, either open, where voters choose candidates and parties, the ballot looks like this by the way, or closed, where ranking is determined by leadership loyalty over actual performance. Proportional past the post is the only system of its kind that requires neither. 100% of MPs are candidates that are voted in by and are directly accountable to their constituents. And there's no need for complicated ranked voting that Scotland's local elections prove voters don't understand. One cross each on two pieces of paper is easier and quicker to tally up than preferential ballots. In 1951, the Conservatives came second in
Hard to
the
believe
vote,
that
yet
there are
not only
people who
won
can't
more
count to
seats than
5.
I know, and like,
Or the instruction is simply rank
rank
your candidates 1 to 5, 1 being the
the one you like
first
best.
choice
Yeah.
and 5 being your least choice.
This is stuff that kindergartners can grasp. I don't get
Yeah.
what the problem
And
is.
it's, of course, it's reactionaries that will say like, oh, it's too complicated, it confuses people. See, confuse some people.
Oh, there's too much complexity, so it must be bad.
Now, this is also because they will be saying how confusing it is as it's being implemented in things that make it confusing. This was like in Portland, I think, Portland, Oregon. They were doing some ranked choice vote reform, and it didn't work out that well because A, it was sort of halfway because it was just ranked choice, but of course you don't do anything else.
Yeah.
And B, I'd have to read up on it again, but essentially the opposition basically sabotaged it, or some, I mean, it still worked, I guess, but
Yeah.
it was like you had a disinformation campaign of sorts.
Oh, I'm sure. Any positive
because
change
like
can have that.
all an opposition has to do is put out like so this is standard like get out the vote lit, because again they really hate their constituents, like they really think their constituencies are stupid, and I suppose through experience it's like, well, they are really stupid, they do make really dumb mistakes all the time, and they are like little children, so like, but it's also like, well, they act like children because you act like parents all the time. It's the psychology that you are reinforcing.
Yep.
Instead of telling them like adults, that makes them feel like adults, and then they act like adults. But let's see, how was it? Oh yeah, so like you put out, you actually do a get out the vote like with a fake ballot, showing them how they need to vote. It's like, here are the people you're going to vote for. This is the ballot. This is what your ballot should look like when you're done with it. Because that's how much we have to spell it out for you. Or like when a version of it is when they're not in row A, they're not the Democrat. So we need to tell the people who want to vote for me that I'm not in row A, because they've been trained to vote row A all the way their whole freaking lives. And these are old people, Democrats.
Wow.
That I'm on row B. Or I'm on row C, or whatever it is. I'm independent, or whatever. And or in the primary, like, what row am I on? It's because it's randomized, so it's like I need to tell them I'm on the 3rd row. So the vote live will be I'm row 3. So it's like, how do you do that when it's ranked choice? So you could, if you're the opposition, you oppose it, you could put out some fake ballot of what it will look like, and with different instructions, or it's not the right ballot, right? And then so when they get into the polling place, it's like, it's different than what it looked like. I'm confused. I don't know what to do. I've been given different instructions from the person I want to vote for, and then the real ballot, which gets me thinking about
that's all it takes to.
Yeah, which gets me thinking about how it's been working out for our ballot line in Nevada, which I guess we're losing, because the fucking state, what's it called? State Attorney General? No, the Secretary of State. Their office gave the Stein campaign the wrong, like, not if not the wrong paperwork, but inaccurate paperwork.
Mm.
So when they sent in their paperwork and the petitions, which they got 3 times what they needed, it had like I guess I'm assuming it was the wrong cover sheet. But this is the cover sheet they gave the Stein campaign. And the lower courts held their ballot status. But like usual, the higher court said no. Said, oh, no, you did follow like the rules. You did in legalese. You broke the rules, or it isn't the right form. So I get all these petitions are basically moot or useless now. They're thrown out. And these judges, like if they're candidates in a video game for assassination, like, but it's all around, just not just the level of the courts ruling in that way, which happens in any state. So it's just like, it doesn't fucking matter who's appointing them. They're going to be like, they're going to rule against you eventually. And that the Democrats in office would do this, it's just, and then say, whoa, you gotta get, you Greens gotta get your shit together. Oh, you're not serious. Anyway, I didn't want to go that direction because it's so fucking maddening.
That is infuriating.
Or depressing. It's both.
Let's
finish this up.
Yeah, I just did want to mention too, Minneapolis has had ranked choice voting since I think 2009. I think I was just reading.
Really, that long?
Yep, 2006 became the first, one of the largest jurisdictions to adopt ranked choice voting, and it's been for.
Then how is there that fuck up where you had like a socialist who was like a DSA candidate, but they were a socialist, and you had a Green who wasn't a socialist, like kind of run in a council district and kind of mess things up.
I'm not sure about the
and they were able to split the vote. If there was ranked choice, then they wouldn't be splitting the vote then.
Yeah, I know it has not yet worked out for the Greens all that well. I mean, we had Cam Gordon for a while, but then he actually got voted out.
Well, how has it been working overall then? Do you have council wards, or is it like at large?
We have wards.
You have wards. So how is it?
No, we have.
You don't have.
We have
you
some
don't have
at-large
more
seats too, but I'm not.
You don't have a diversity of candidates in each ward, so it's still just a 2-person race.
Well, I mean, the Greens
What's
still struggle. Like I've been trying to meet up with the local Greens for quite some time. They don't have a current website. They don't have current contact sheets. They're just kind of. It's a group of maybe a dozen people who just kind of hold on to the idea, and they're not super well organized as far as I can tell.
They're not a functioning committee of 12 people.
Seems that way.
They're just sort of a social.
They get together sometimes and have meetings and stuff.
That's technically what we are right now.
Yeah.
Though we have done some actions of sorts, and we have done a campaign or two now and then, but not like a. Well, the best serious effort we did was 2 of them. We did one in Troy, and then we did one in South Glens Falls, where she lost the first time, but then she won the next time. Because of our, we helped her campaign, and that kind of gave her some cred, so that the next time she ran, when it wasn't like a big turnout election, she was a shoo-in. But she only stayed in for a term, like something happened in her life, and she had to quit. It's a small town area. So, but yeah, it just goes to show that just the voting with the ranked choice is not some silver bullet, because we still need,
but at least
money for infrastructure and media access and and all kinds of and better organizing.
Absolutely, but at least it
more-
stops the people from being like, well, spoiler.
Yeah. I'm
So
not even
psychologically,
going.
it
I won't
removes
even
a barrier.
donate. Yeah, I won't even donate. I won't
Right.
even, go out and door knock or whatever.
Right.
Which is how Cam could, I guess, but Cam wasn't getting elected via ranked choice because he was in for longer than that, wasn't he? So he was just a popular guy
That I'm not sure.
or whatever.
I'd have to look more into it too.
Well, maybe I was pissed because Cam got unseated by like a DSA or something.
I think it was something like that. I think it was the
And
same
that's-
election that.
So I was just
Ilhan
pissed
got
off.
in.
I was pissed off at DSA for that. I
Hmm.
guess. Like you couldn't run anywhere else. Why are you running against Cam? What do you got against Cam? Cam not socialist enough for you? He's the one pitching like the transformation of the police force.
Yeah.
He was the one like doing that with the champion. Really weird. But I didn't look too deep into it, I guess. But I reacted to his unseating, and I'm like, I was really pissed.
Yeah, that was very sad.
There's an episode called like I ran for the Green Party or something because it was like 2020. But yeah, it's just the voting system is one thing, then the election system is another thing.
Right.
And then there's the campaign system, which is how are they funded. And right now it's
Right.
completely laissez-faire. There's nothing social about it. Unless there's matching funds. But then you get fundraising emails just about the fucking matching funds. And then because it's still in the hands of bureaucrats, they've been withholding them some from Stein. And that slowed down our last ballot status. Gaining ballot status. Because there was like a few $1 million being held up. We needed that. But we looks like we'll be on the ballot in 40 states, write-ins in 5 more. Or rather more than that. She basically said we're just not going to be on the ballot at all. Like we're not even can't vote for us in 3 states, which is essentially South Dakota, Illinois, and Georgia. It was actually the Breakfast Club was able to name
Oh yeah,
them.
what happened in
Funny.
Georgia there? Wasn't there something weird that?
We actually might be
was-
getting that back
Okay.
because that was a court case, but I think we might be winning in the higher court instead. It's always such a fucking crapshoot, but that's what really sucks about it. Just like with the recounts and whatever.
Sure.
It's like you have to depend on the courts and like how are they going to interpret things. It's like this. It's weird because like there's so much fucking case law about it, but at the same time, it's like it seems like they're making decisions in a very arbitrary way, though I suppose if we really look at it, judges are never making arbitrary decisions, even though then you can look hard and see that a lot of them are making arbitrary decisions, but they're meant to use them based on case law. Like what did the last few judges, how did they rule on this? And if there is no case law, that's when it usually gets passed up to the highest court, Supreme Court, which of course will just be literalist about the law. And there's no spirit whatsoever. So let's finish this.
Sure.
There's another video I think I'll pitch, and then that'll be it today.
Sounds good.
Labour, but an absolute majority. This is nonsense and would never happen again under proportional past post, as the quotas would prevent parties from greatly exceeding their popular support. The next key benefit of Triple P is the separation of popularity of candidates from parties. As individual seats are won on candidate vote share as opposed to party support, prospective MPs must galvanise personal likability and not rely on the party to do the heavy lifting for them. Popular MPs and
vice versa.
parties are less likely to lose their seat, and vice versa. For parties, this simplifies post-election results by clearly separating which of the two issues, party or candidate, need more work, and for voters, they get candidates that are more liked and won't take their constituency for granted. Most common PR voting methods require voter thresholds or regional MPs, which all but eliminate the chance for independent MPs.
I do like that one.
Proportional past the post. The
Just a quick word. I do like that one because there will be some really fickle people, not usually politically conscious, I guess, who will not vote for Green or any candidate in particular. This goes for Bernie, let's say in the primaries, for some personal reason. Like, oh, I don't like Bernie's vibe, or I don't like him. Never mind the policies, you know. They don't they vote for the person, not the policies, or I want to vote for a person, not the party, even though the party is supposed to be for policies. Of course, as far as the duopoly is concerned, that's not the case. They're just networks of coalitions of interest.
Yeah.
There's no real policy there.
Yeah.
There's policies that maybe they represent or they're for, but within those coalitions, but it's never in a platform and it's never mediated in any way. And I guess that's the same with Greens too. Like, we have our platform and we like people to stick to it. But like, say when it comes to gun control or something, like, it really is up to the person elected. And especially since we're always locals, it's sort of up to you to figure out what is best, you know, which is it's a mass line approach. What works in your locality? What are your constituents, or what are they talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway, but I do like that whole, like, well, there's just one thing I don't like about Jill Stein, or Jill Stein, like, you know, it's just like, yeah, but or it's like, I like the Green Party, but like, I just like the presidential candidate's always some person I don't care for. And
Yeah.
that's just like, that hurts.
so
I think
stupid
that
'cause
hurts the most. That just hurts the most, because it's like, wait, so you're open to third party voting, but you don't like the candidate.
And you also,
particular.
but it's also the same people that talk about how much they hate the Democratic candidates every single time. So, like, pick a lane. Either you're going to vote by the candidate, or you're going to accept someone who maybe doesn't quite hew to your same politics, but comes a hell of a lot closer than whatever the Democrats are throwing at.
You know, it's based on the candidate when it comes to Biden versus Harris, because there's no difference in policy,
Yeah.
but it's all in the vibe and the personality.
Yeah. Well, and
Though the personality isn't that
coherence.
much different either, actually, but younger, you know.
Uh-huh.
But there are people like Taylor Swift and other celebrities who will usually do get out the vote for Democrats as simple libs, but they wouldn't do that for Biden. And that was one of the reasons, like, the donors, it was part of the conversation of, like, we really need to switch horses here, because we're not going to have that star power or social capital to bear. And I guess it's helping, but we'll see. There's always that whole, like, oh, Trump is so cooked. It's just a horse race, always horse race. It was the same way in 2016. Oh yeah, Hillary's totally going to win.
They were
she's
they were
got
so surprised.
all this polling showing her 3 to 4 points ahead. That's exactly what that's what the polls with Harris, like, 4 points ahead, you know, in certain states. It's like, it's the same fucking numbers, actually. Actually, no, it's not the same, because they're lower, because there's like the 10% that just really do not know what the fuck they're going to do, or will go to vote for RFK. Maybe they'll write them in. A lot of them are puzzled about what they're going to do.
Yeah. They seem to be puzzled with life in general. So,
of course.
Last 4 elections returned an average of 3 independent MPs, with small parties like the Independent Group for Change and Health Concern also picking up seats as well. Alongside increased voter choice, improving the diversity and representation of otherwise underreported local issues, because minor parties actually have a non-zero chance of getting elected, this would encourage progressively more and more candidates to stand in future elections, which would improve voter turnout over time through an increased likelihood of candidates standing.
Well, assuming their campaigns can be funded.
Portions of the electorate.
And assuming they all get equal media access. Because if media access is based on, well, we actually only have airtime for 2 candidates.
Yeah.
So we're going to pick the top 2. Because that's what our media does now, basically. Or they'll say, well, we want to, God, even when there's no polling, they'll say, like, well, there were 2 main candidates with an actual campaign or campaign funding, or they're major party candidates. So those are the candidates that matter. You don't. Yeah, and then we'll be thrown a bone sometimes by maybe a fair-minded journalist who believes in equal airtime, but it's rare. And as you can see by the media sphere, there are not a lot of people that believe in equal access to media for candidates, as far as the Greens or socialists or
I
the
definitely don't want that.
libertarian candidate. Chase is Chase being interviewed by all those libertarian podcasts? A lot of them hate him. Biggest to left because he's kind of a moderate as far as the libertarian goes.
What even is a moderate libertarian?
He believes he's good on social, like he supports
Oh, okay.
social programs
Some social programs, some
and
government, some of the time.
isn't a complete
Gotcha.
like douchebag capitalist. Like Chase is sort of like he's the result of there being a left wing caucus and
The
having
libertarians, the
having a
socialist
poll.
libertarian caucus. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure if they're still there or not, but
Yeah,
the fact
I'm
that
not sure.
Chase is actually the least crazy, but not an elected libertarian,
Mhm.
or like a Gary Johnson who was a Republican governor but switches, which is how they usually recruit candidates. Now they've stopped doing that, and they're sort of
Yeah.
like the Greens in that way, and thus they're just as popular as the Greens. They're not going to get more than that 5% they would get with Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
Like I have to remember what JoJo got in 2020, but I don't think it was that much more. It wasn't that much. I think it was a lot lower than Gary Johnson got,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was pretty negligible.
and just like Cowie,
Right.
JoJo wasn't interviewed on
They
mainstream
both
media
just got
at all.
steamrolled.
She didn't. I don't think she got any. I have to look that up, and I'm curious now.
Yeah, I mean, even Democracy Now! Shunned all third parties that election. So.
Yeah, no, and this one, I saw on some Green Party pages about like, oh, we need to message and campaign so that Democracy Now! Interviews Stein.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, we have to ask them. We shouldn't have to ask them.
Shouldn't have to.
If they're not going to do it, then fuck them. But I guess well, that's the wrong attitude to take, because it's truly a doomer mentality that I'm going to have then. Because it's just no one will talk to us, and we shouldn't have to beg them for it. And if we have to do, and we've done this, by the way, for 20, 30 years, where we have to do a campaign to be in debates, to be covered by the press, and it burns us out. It leaves us without, like, we do all of this and we don't get anything out of it. The only argument was like, well, if we work hard to get in debates this time, it will be easier next time. Well, guess what? It's not easier. It actually only gets harder, because when we do get media coverage, we do get like in the debates, we do a little bit better, we get a little more popular, and then the rug is pulled, and all of those fair-minded, media and the people hold debates. And let's say this is a local election. It's the local TV station. But what are they? The Fox affiliate, the APC affiliate. When it comes to WAMC, it's National Public Broadcasting. But even they'll be like, well, I think they'll do an interview, but that's it. But it won't be like, they won't include us in debates or anything.
Yeah,
it's maddening, and it's just like, it just shows like, look, when you're actually independent, all these other institutions are in fact the status quo, and they show. But it's like that's why a lot of people don't become independent, because they do not want to be facing that. They do want, like, a DSA Democrat will be interviewed, and in Chicago, they've been electing. They got a whole caucus of like 9 of them. And so Chicago is like, it's the most socialist city again or something. But they are still Democrats, and they're all still pretty much, their platforms are just social democratic. And when I'm in Chicago, I'm not walking through all the working class. I went through some working class neighborhoods. It's okay, but it's not great.
Yeah.
You know, especially since the violence and the crime is still really bad. It's just well, I guess there's not so much anti-poverty programs, but I suppose as a city they are letting people camp. I was passing by tents and
Yeah.
whatever
They definitely don't tolerate
places.
much of that here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think tolerating that is, I think, what makes them more lefty in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, high bar.
Yeah.
But the whole like this, the mayor is I guess cool or whatever. Maybe he's already going back on promises. But
Probably.
the whole like we're gonna have a publicly owned grocery store. We'll see if that actually
Great idea.
happens.
Let's hope it takes off. I did bring up the election results where Cam Gordon got voted out. So it looks like he lost in the third round of voting. It was a ranked choice election by just about 250 votes, something like that, from the person who ended up winning, Robin Wansley Warloba. I'm not too familiar.
And what's their affiliation?
I don't know. I would have to look them up.
Well, I think that was what I think that so it was the third round. So like I think the DSAer and Cam essentially got knocked out because they did in I guess in ranked choice you can still split the vote because it means that like the left you have two left-wing candidates versus one moderate. The left-wingers will get lower vote totals and they can still lose out in multiple rounds to the moderate that gets less than both of them put together. Although if it's ranked, then I guess shouldn't for the DSAer, Cam would be their second choice, and for Cam, the DSAer would be their second choice.
Yeah.
So
you
how
would
is it
think would go
they
that way.
how? But I think the moderate won, and that's what pissed me off.
Yeah.
But this is why maybe preferential voting is superior to the ranking.
Mhm.
It is more of like you're not ranking in order to the candidates. You're ranking your preference for each candidate. So you can give both the DSAer and the Green both 5. You can say, I equally want both of them. So what gets added up is not their rankings, and it's still instant runoffs. You take that out. There's no instant runoff. It's just all the candidates get their numbers added up, and whoever has the most, that's the winner.
Yeah.
So it is still just one count, and that's probably where it's less confusing and less like, well, with multiple rounds, it's like the person who wins isn't really like the person who got the most. So
Yeah.
I want to do the star voting one next.
Sure.
I know we're running out of time, so let's just
Yeah, we can
keep
skip
going.
to that. Star voting. Let's find it.
Yeah, okay. I guess we'll go with this guy.
Yeah, I think.
But it's nice to learn about this combination,
Yeah,
but it
kinda
just
cool.
points out the weaknesses of the proportional. At least we're getting to that with our practical and material examples. So type in star voting. There's one with
okay.
plushies in the video card. Who are you going to do star voting versus ranked? Not that one. Scroll down. There'll be one with plushies in it. There should be one. Well, maybe Mr. Beat. He's sort of.
Yeah, he's not so bad.
He's pretty mainstream. That's kind of long.
Yeah, we won't have time to finish that, but if
keep scrolling down. Then I want to see the particular video.
you don't remember the channel at all or anything.
No, it wasn't like. It's weird. It should have been like the 5th thing that came up.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're getting a bunch of.
Yeah, we're getting away
NBA
from that.
voting and stuff.
Star,
All-star voting and.
Yeah, we're far away from it now. So go back up. I guess pick anything that's like 10 minutes.
Sure. Eugene voters consider star voting.
No, too short. And it's local news.
Yeah, who knows how good. Here's one that's about.
Yeah, okay.
Oh wait, no, can't do TED.
no,
I've
no,
had
Ted.
trouble with them before.
Yeah. Less than 1 minute, maybe. Still has rounds apparently. Okay, do the top one then.
Top one.
How does star voting work? Star stands for score,
actually, the next
then
one is what
automatic
the next
runoff.
the next
And
one's
that's exactly
what I
how
wanted.
it works.
There we go.
Meet the Wacky Wonders. This dance troupe has been practicing for weeks and they are super excited for their big recital. I mean, just look at their faces. The only thing that they're a little bit apprehensive about is picking the fabric for their costumes. In the past, they've had trouble agreeing on what to wear, and they hope things will go more smoothly this time. Because they're dancing to David Bowie's Space Oddity, which is a great choice, they talked it over and generally agreed that it would be a great idea to have a space-themed fabric. They also think it would be awesome to have purple fabric, since it just so happens that they all love that color. So naturally, this purple, space-themed fabric seems like it would be perfect. But these are scientifically minded dancers, and they want to make sure that they're being fair about it, so they decide to put it to a vote. They come up with these 3 options. The purple fabric with a space theme, this plain purple color with no print, and lastly, this really cute white cotton space print fabric. The dancers find that they fall into 3 different blocks of voters. The first block really wants the purple space fabric. They love that it is both purple and space. If they can't get it, they could live with the plain purple, but they would be kind of sad about it. They really are not fans of the white space fabric. Actually, they hate it. Then there are these 3 dancers. All they care about is getting something
So notice
purple.
she's putting
They
up
have
the
a slight
rankings
preference
that they
for the
would go
plain
with.
purple, but like the purple space almost as much. As long as it's purple, they're happy. They also really hate the white space fabric. The last block of voters love space more than anything. That's their main priority. They lean towards the white space fabric, but honestly would be happy with anything space themed. These voters hate the plain purple fabric. Everybody casts their votes. 2 votes for purple space, 3 votes for plain purple, and 4 votes for white space. We'll add them up, and it looks like the white space fabric wins. But this feels unsatisfying. The white space fabric won with 44% of the vote, so it's not the choice of the majority. And actually, this fabric was the most polarizing option. The dancers who didn't want it really didn't want it. In fact, 56% of the voters are extremely
Did you see what they
unhappy
did
with
with
the
the?
choice.
Yeah.
So what happened here? The problem is that these dancers used choose one voting. Everyone cast 1 vote for the fabric they liked the best, and the fabric option with the most votes won. This is a really straightforward way of voting, but it actually comes with a major problem known as vote splitting. In this case, the 2 sets of voters who hated the white space fabric had their votes split between the 2 purple options. As a consequence, they were divided and conquered, and the white fabric ended up winning. Choose one voting does not take into account what voters' backup choices are. In this case, all of the voters really liked the purple space fabric a lot, but they weren't able to show that when casting their votes because choose one voting only looks at the top choices. So there must be a way to fix this problem, right? One option would be to have each dancer rank the fabrics in order of preference and then use ranked choice voting to pick the winner. First, each voter ranks the fabrics in order of preference. Next, we'll count up the total number of first place rankings on each fabric, and we'll see which fabric has the least number of first place votes. In this case, it's the purple space fabric, so purple space fabric is eliminated. Wait, what? Okay, let's move on.
This
The
is
next
why
step
I
is
don't
to take
like
the
ranked
ballots
choice,
that
actually.
supported the eliminated candidate and transfer them to their next choice, which in this case is plain purple. After counting up the ballots again, plain purple now has more than 50%, so plain purple wins. This seems like a better result. 56% of the voters get either their first or second choice, and only 44% are unhappy. But these poor guys, this 44%, they're not just unhappy, they're extremely unhappy. The plain purple fabric was their last choice. And even though their favorite candidate didn't win, their vote did not transfer to their second choice. What the heck?
which is what
Isn't that how
I
ranked choice voting
think
is supposed
should
to work?
happen.
Yeah.
That's
But
not
because
fair.
it eliminates
Since
one,
everyone in the
it's
group
like,
loves purple and
I don't like
everyone
that
was
part
on
of it.
board with
I
the
see what you're
space
saying.
theme, wouldn't the purple space fabric make the most sense? Wouldn't that make the most voters the most happy? Why don't we try another voting
now, of course, if
method?
they were just
This one's
using
called star
consensus,
voting.
that's probably
For star
like they
voting,
just
the
get
dancers
to the
all
purple
score their choices
space,
on a
right?
You're like,
Since
yeah, they're all pretty good with
nobody
that,
there
yeah.
hated it, so there would be no blocks or objections. So if they were using direct democracies, being as that it's simply for 7-9 votes, it's under 10. Consensus should be the way they actually make decisions. But let's say each of these voters represents like 100 people.
Sure.
Plushies rather.
Yeah.
And the Snorlax is 200 people.
scale of 0 to 5 stars. The dancers who loved the purple space fabric the most give 5 stars to the purple space fabric. They also throw a few stars to plain purple, but they pretty strongly prefer the purple space. They give 0 stars to the white space fabric. Remember how I said the plain purple voters liked
it's
the
0
purple
to
space
5,
fabric
yeah.
almost as much as their first choice?
I feel like it should be 1
That's
to 5.
why they
though.
gave purple space a score of 4. They would be nearly as happy to have that fabric. Similarly, the
America,
Oh shoot.
take a good look at your beloved Canada.
Cooked on about
Meet the Wacky Wonders.
Oh, no.
This dance troupe has been practicing for
It was
weren't able
no,
to
it was
show that
further.
when casting their votes because the group loves purple and everyone was on
See,
board with the
there's
space theme.
marks.
Wouldn't the score their choices on a scale of 0 to 5 stars? The dancers who loved the purple space fabric the most give 5 stars to the purple space fabric. They also throw a few stars to plain purple, but they pretty strongly prefer the purple space. They give 0 stars to the white space fabric. Remember how I said the plain purple voters liked the purple space fabric almost as much as their first choice? That's why they gave purple space a score of 4. They would be nearly as happy to have that fabric. Similarly, the dancers that voted for the white space fabric would be nearly as happy with the purple space fabric, so they also give purple space fabric 4 stars. Now we'll add up all the scores. With star voting, you take the 2 highest scoring candidates and they become finalists. In this case, the 2 purple options have the highest scores, so they move on to the runoff round. In the runoff, we see which of these 2 finalists was preferred by more voters. These 2 voters preferred purple space, these 3 voters preferred plain purple, and these 4 voters preferred purple space. Purple space fabric wins. This makes a lot of sense because all of the dancers loved that fabric. They all gave it a
I'm not
score
sure
of
why
either
you need the
4 or
runoff
5,
round though.
and nobody had it as their last choice. Unlike standard choose one voting, star voting allows you to show your order of preference for the candidates. And unlike ranked choice voting, star voting allows you to show how much or how little you like each candidate. Star voting also counts all the ballot data at once, so you don't have to worry about the order of elimination messing up
There you
your
go.
vote. At the
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's better all around than even ranked choice, because you can shun the ones you really hate, and that's
I brought it-
also powerful.
Yeah, I brought it up to at the socialist meetup. That's the social meetup.
Sure.
To one of our organizers, and he seemed to have a reason to not like it. It wasn't a strong no, but he kind of pointed out that it had a drawback in a map or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'd
but-
certainly love to see them.
And my only response was like, well, it seems like every voting reform seems to have some flaw,
Everything's gonna have something.
but it's which flaws do you like care about? And I think the flaw in this is that it doesn't have like party preference or something. So it's like if the candidate voting is star, and this is also the conversation I've had with the person who was introducing it to me, was that no, this is just for executives. For legislators, just use PR. You know, it's like that's fine. That's not. There's no objection in election reform circles about PR for legislators. It's more for executives that then a lot of the pressure for like not vote splitting and it's just one person. So you really have to get the voting system right, or
Yeah,
it's
I
always
can
going to
see
have
that.
that. It's always going to have that problem, or it's when you're trying to combine it with legislative. My comrade Peter will mention that like something that the last video didn't talk about was multi-member districts. So it's proportional representation, but the districts are multi-member. So so it's not proportional, like proportional isn't to the entire country,
Right.
and then it's a maximum number of seats that your party can gain, which seems kind of like it's fair in a nerdy way, but it's just like maximum seats, not minimum. You know, it should be minimum. And this and so proportional multi-member, it's like, well, if in this case in Albany we have 15 council seats, we'd have 3 5-person districts. So the number of seats don't change, but how they're proportioned out is different. So you have 3, you know, downtown district, a midtown district, an uptown district. And so if out of like 5 seats, let's say there's 10, 100% voters, it's, breakdown is 20, 20, 60. Well, it means that, 3 Dems will be seated and 2 minor orgs can be seated. So, and that would be that would change up the makeup of the city.
Right.
And then the mayor, the mayor's star voted, and then we can have 5 candidates like we sometimes do, but it's still very lopsided race because the Democrat will have all of the institutional support, money from the real estate sector, which is essentially the capitalist class of Albany, as far as I'm concerned. I can't really guess who else is involved in who donates to the mayor's war chest.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting. And there needs to be some opposition because otherwise, like the Dems running for the next mayorship, I mean, they're gonna pretend they're social justice warriors, but
there's no consequences to going back on everything.
Yeah, they're completely corporate. It's just to give that messaging of like, no matter which Democrat wins, it's real estate that comes first. And if you and the answer to the activists is like, well, we need to get into real estate.
Yeah.
That's some of their answers. And sometimes getting into real estate is, and I'm talking about that way too, actually.
Yeah.
But I want to do it in a non-capitalist way, while some are of straddling the line, or they're doing the best they can. But it's hard to know where they really fall when the chips are down. Are they going to try to side with? They'll probably be conflicted, but they can't show that conflict in public, which sucks because then I can't really judge where there's vulnerabilities, I guess. I need to be doing espionage. I need people on the inside. I need to be which the machine had, lots of eyes and ears. It's and so too organizations, I guess, need to be like insurgent armies with espionage and of sorts.
It's a strategy, yes.
That's a lot of different skill sets that we just don't fucking have.
I don't. Yeah.
And recruiting them is sort of a slim chance of that. Though not impossible. I mean, there's people from the military or whatever.
Sure.
But yeah.
All right.
So, c'est la vie.
Yep. Good time.
We'll continue this. I'll try to focus on getting that real estate co-op stuff, but I do want to. We'll go through. We'll keep going through the list of videos I've picked, but I'll keep kind of slimming it down. Things that I don't think are worth covering or they're too long, like that dirtbag left one.
Yeah.
Though in that one, I just want to cover the first 10 minutes because I watched that and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good, breakdown, I guess. But we don't really need to. I think we should just focus on moving forward and what we as leftists want to do.
Yeah.
And not so much even though the video sphere is fun in a way, but it's also not fun. Some are fun. Now let's get to business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, thank you as always. It's been a good time, and look forward to next week. So have a good one, Dan.
More plushies.
More plushies representation.
I voted for the purple.
That's what proportional representation would capture, is the plushie vote. Yes.
Plushie party. Plushie party.
The plushie. All right. Well, have
Good
a
night,
one.
everybody.
See you. All right. That was Dan Platt of the Albany Greens. I'm going to share.
How does Star
real quick?
It's 20.
The Communist Manifesto has literally
The first video, because I forgot to share it earlier, so it's going to share a link to it, and then we will we'll get out of here. All right. So here's Bidwat. All right, y'all. Thanks for joining me tonight. Been a good time as always. For the foreseeable future, probably not going to be doing these Sunday streams. I'm just too busy with grad school, unfortunately. Sad times, but I'm sure the burden will lift eventually, and we'll get back into the swing of it. Till then, you'll just have to suffice getting by with the weekly shows with Dan. But, I hope all of you have a great night, and I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.